Chapter 16. Stelle. Losing himself in work during the day was as good a way as any to take Stelle's mind off of whatever happened with Lucien, so he did it for as long as he could. Unfortunately, at night, his mind wandered to places he would rather not go. His feelings for Lucien were still there, but they wavered like a mirage, like his very image of Lucien was bending into something unrecognizable. The worst part was that he didn't understand why. Something about the whole situation was so wrong, and Stelle had no evidence to prove his theories. No one to confirm that he wasn't making it all up in his head. It was making him feel crazy, and sometimes late at night, he half convinced himself that he was. That is, until he stepped out of the dance studio one Friday afternoon to see Alice Thompson standing in the hallway, her eyes finding him immediately. Alice Thompson was not someone Stelle had ever spoken to, but he knew her regardless. She handled a portion of Palace Entertainment and was generally elusive to the idols, as she intended to stay in her office on the top floor. Her name popped up on contracts, but other than that, no idol had interacted with her past a polite greeting or two. So the fact that she was striding over to Royce Estelle, a member of a group and not even a soloist at the top of their earnings, was unheard of. Stelle just stood there dumbfounded as Alice neared him, her face unreadable. "Royce Estelle, yes?" she asked, her height towering over Stelle, her intimidating air dwarfing him further. He nodded in confirmation, gripping the strap of his duffel bag. "How can I help you, Miss Thompson?" "Alice is fine," she replied. "Come, walk with me." Stelle followed without a word as she swiftly turned around, her heels clacking on the floor with every confident step. The two entered an elevator, and Alice pressed the button for the top floor in silence. Stelle wanted to ask what was going on, to see if he was in some kind of legal trouble. His mouth opened to speak, but Alice shot him a stern look that told him she would rather he stay quiet, and he quickly abandoned the questions that hovered in his mind. The ride was smooth, but the air was painfully awkward. Stelle just hoped the confrontation would be fast. When the doors opened, Alice stepped out and led him to her office, her silver nameplate on the door spotless. She stepped in, leaving space for Stelle to follow as she said, "Sit. Make yourself comfortable." Stelle knew he would never be able to settle down, but he followed her order regardless. He sat in a cushy black chair as Alice sat behind her desk. It was an incredibly plush office, filled with dark wooden furniture and both modern and antique appliances. It was really rather stylish. A sleek silver espresso machine sat on a shelf attached to one of the walls, and a golden-green glass lamp cast a warm glow on her computer monitor. Under less anxiety-inducing circumstances, Stelle would appreciate his surroundings more, but his eyes were glued to a point on her desk, not daring to look at her face. "Royce," Alice began, "what is said today stays between us. Do you understand?" Stelle shifted in his seat, trying to dispel some of his tenseness. "I understand, Miss... Alice." She nodded appreciatively as Stelle glanced up at her. Alice folded her hands in front of her, leaning in just a bit, her voice low. "I have heard about a certain situation regarding Lucien Angel. I know you two signed around the same time and that you've known each other even before that, which leads me to believe you may be close to him. Is that correct?" Stelle's confusion only grew, but if it had something to do with Lucien, he wanted to know what she had to say. "Yes," he nodded. "We're pretty close friends. So, if something was going on, he would confide in you." Stelle bit his lip, unsure of how to answer that. Just days ago, he would have said yes without a doubt, but the silence between them was making him reconsider. "I'm not totally sure. I think it depends on what it is." Alice sighed, and she used a hand to rub the bridge of her nose in frustration. "Regardless, you interact with him personally, which means you would know better than anyone else. Save for Melanie Andrews, perhaps." Stelle could agree with that at least. No one else spoke with Lucien nearly as much as his manager or Stelle. He never interacted with anyone else as frequently. He kept everything at a personable, professional distance. "Now, tell me," Alice said, her words coming out carefully, as if any one might result in punishment. She held Stelle's career in her hands. One wrong word and it would crumble. "There were gifts being left for Lucien Angel within company property. No one knows the source, and no one knows how they were getting there. Do you know anything about that?" Stelle nodded. "Yeah, they popped up daily for a while. Lucien said he liked them and he didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Turns out they were from a backup dancer that just transferred. I think he said it was some girl named Jackie?" Alice's brows creased at his words, and her lips pursed before she spoke. "And there have been no gifts since her transfer." "That's right." "And there has been nothing else of note?" Alice asked, looking at Stelle so pointedly that he sucked in a breath. He was at an impasse. Should he mention the cameras? The odd behavior from the other day? The fact that he had a gut feeling that something more was going on? He feared being wrong and being dismissed yet again. Stelle didn't know if it was worth it, worth the pain it caused him. But Alice's eyes softened, if only a bit, and her voice became much more genuine. "Anything at all, Royce. I need to know any and all concerns regarding Lucien Angel. What you tell me stays between us. I swear." What did he really have to lose? If he was crazy, better to have someone level-headed blatantly tell him so. Stelle drew in a breath and let the words flow, frantic and fast. "There are cameras everywhere, Miss Thompson. They're the same as all the rest in the building, but they are everywhere Lucien goes regularly. I know they weren't there before we signed with the company. I'm positive. You have to believe me." And Alice was patient, listening to him earnestly, without any hint of judgment on her face. So Stelle continued. "And I swear on my life that I saw someone follow Lucien home before. I didn't see who, but I saw someone across the street, and I know it sounds insane, but I think it's all connected. I think Lucien has a stalker." Alice paused, letting Stelle's last words hang between them. She seemed to be piecing it all together in her mind, her expression troubled and cloudy. When she finally spoke, it was as if it were to herself, completely forgetting about Stelle. "I can't be sure, but I need to put my own fears to rest. If I'm wrong, hell, even if I'm right, what will I do? Gloria, what do I do?" Stelle was completely lost, so he said nothing, just let Alice compose herself. Once she did, her eyes were trained on Stelle, deadly serious. "I'm going to tell you something that may be a mistake to say, but I need to have peace of mind, and I believe you do as well." She took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment as she prepared herself. "I have a godson, one I have never had any affection for. His mother is someone I made a promise to, many years ago. Due to his parents' deaths, the boy came into my custody. His name is William Caliban, and he is a monster. I have reason to believe the stalker you have seen is William, and that he is behind the gifts as well." "But," Stelle stammered, his head spinning. "Why him? What do you mean he's a monster? How would he be able to leave all those gifts? What about Jackie, the backup dancer?" "I had someone contact the dancer, and she stated nothing of the sort had happened." Stelle froze. How did you know about that?" Alice smiled ruefully, waving a hand dismissively in the air. "Melanie Andrews works for me, and she reported the incident to me. Well, reported is a strong word. She has a penchant for gossip, so she had mentioned it all in passing. However, your mention of cameras was new, something she hadn't told me. I did some work of my own and confirmed the gifts were not left by Jackie, and so I had to resort to requesting a meeting with you." "So Lucien lied? Why would he do that?" Alice shook her head. "I cannot answer that. All I can tell you is that William is a young man without feelings or a conscience. He used to work here as a tech support 5 years ago. Then he suddenly wanted to quit, which meant I could no longer keep an eye on him. I do not believe he is safe to be around, so I gave him a place to be away from others, isolated. I didn't put the timeline together. Not until now. Timeline of what? Stelle was becoming more and more anxious, his chest tight and painful as he listened to Alice. William quit immediately after Lucien Angel signed for Palace Entertainment. Then the cameras were put up in places he frequented, according to you. I also heard from Melanie that some of his things were disappearing, things that would not be missed or paid much attention to. Then the gifts started. What I do not know is why they stopped. But you mentioned seeing a stalker physically outside of the company, which gave me the most concern. What do you mean, outside of the company? Didn't you say he quit? Alice looked away, her face showing clear guilt. He quit his job, but he never left the building. He lives here in the building, in a place that only I know of at this point. But now, you need to do what I cannot. Stelle began to breathe heavily, his thoughts racing to catch up. Everything was too much. It was all crazy. It was all impossible. Alice reached into a desk drawer and retrieved a keyring. She slid one off and placed it on the desk between them, withdrawing her hand into her lap. I can't be the one to incriminate him. Not when I swore to Gloria to take care of him. I do not care what happens to him, but I can't bring myself to betray her. She was too important to me. That is why you need to take the key and do what I can't. Stelle looked at the key, not moving to take it. What is the key for? It's the key to William's home, down in the basement of the building. He and I are the only ones with keys, the only ones who know his location. You must take it and go while Lucien Angel is being followed to ensure William is gone. He must be gone when you go, because I cannot promise he won't hurt you. Stelle's temper began to rise then, the insanity of the whole situation finally catching up to his logic. You think your godson is a stalker, one that would hurt people without feeling a thing, and he lives in this building, and you won't go down and check yourself? What the fuck is wrong with you? Alice's eyes turned cold, and Stelle became afraid of her at that moment, his anger dwindling fast. Do not forget who I am. One word and you are out of a contract and out of your little group. I won't expect you to understand the lengths someone would go for the one they love, even when they are gone. I hope you never come to experience that kind of pain. So no, I will not go myself. This is all I can do without breaking my promise. So take the key and go. Stelle had no words for her. His curiosity was growing, but his fear was too. At the very least, he had a lead, and someone who didn't think he was crazy, and apparently that was enough for him. He took the key and shoved it into his pants pocket, keeping a fist wrapped around it tightly as he rose from his seat. Alice didn't say anything else as he left, the door clicking shut behind him and echoing out into the quiet hall. The end of the day seemed to come in a blank, with Stelle waiting by the front doors and impatiently tapping a foot on the floor. The key weighed heavily in his pocket and grew heavier still as Lucien stepped out of the elevator and walked his way. They made eye contact, Lucien's face painted with a friendly smile that Stelle tried his best to return. Heading out for the day? Stelle asked, hoping his voice did not betray him. Lucien nodded. Mel is driving me home and she's waiting outside, so I can't stay long. How are you doing, though? You seem tense. Stelle just chuckled, the thin veil of his casual persona dangerously close to slipping. I won't keep you then. Maybe we can talk another day? Lucien smiled radiantly as he said, Sounds good. I have a couple of days off, so we can meet up when I'm back. He walked through the doors and disappeared into Mel's car, the two of them driving off slowly. Stelle took a step outside and glanced up and down the sidewalk, not sure what he was looking for. He did not have to guess for long as he saw a taxi pull up to the curb, and a figure in a black hoodie slide inside, the vehicle heading in the same direction as Lucien. That was all he needed. Stelle rushed to the elevator, heart pounding in his ears like a drum, and it only got louder as he pressed the button for the lowest level. Once the doors opened, he scanned the hallways until he found a door labeled basement, and he snuck in soundlessly. The room was dark and filled with boxes and old equipment, so he took out his phone and turned on the flashlight. He looked around at all the walls, but it wasn't a challenge to find the one door at the far end of the room. Stelle held his breath as he reached a shaking hand to the lock, inserting the key and turning it. To his great dismay, the lock clicked open, and he was able to turn the handle. He had hoped Alice was somehow leading him astray, sending him on a wild goose chase, but as he looked down a long staircase that descended into darkness, a shiver ran over him. His feet took each step painstakingly, as if they might disappear beneath him. No such magic happened, and when he reached the bottom, he was terrified of what he might find. Stelle lifted his phone up and became paralyzed at the sights before him. There were a few pieces of furniture, namely a mirror in the corner, a tall dresser on the right-hand wall, a computer desk with a rotating chair, and a single full-sized bed pushed against the far wall. It was all normal enough, until he looked closer. The desk sat in front of 6 monitors, which were all powered off. The wall that the bed was against was the hardest to stomach, as Stelle took trembling steps towards it. Taped on the brick surface were all manner of things, varying from concert tickets to pictures, even to garbage, all of it arranged like a collage. In his dazed state, Stelle kicked a box that was sitting half-tucked under the bed, and his heart nearly stopped at the sudden sound. He lowered his eyes slowly to the box, and saw that the lid was removed already, and inside were more items that all had to do with Lucien. Stelle needed to confirm everything, and he had one more thing to check. He walked to the desk and began to power everything on. The monitors flashed to life, and lucky for him, it seemed William had not closed anything out. Stelle watched as every monitor showed live feeds of parts of the building. The break room, the hallway, the dance studio Lucien used, even the dressing room. Every single screen was filled with locations Stelle knew. Every single thing in that basement revolved around Lucien Angel. Stelle couldn't stand to be there anymore, his stomach turning as he fully realized what he was seeing. He turned everything off and rushed out of the room, his shaking hands struggling to lock the door behind him. His feet moved on their own, making him fly up the stairs and back to the elevator, where he pressed a random button, any button that would take him away from the basement of William Caliban. Stelle ran to the closest bathroom he could find, and vomited in the toilet for some time. It helped ease the pain in his stomach, but his head began to ache as he washed his hands and splashed water on his face. He could easily call the police, bring them to the basement, and have them handle everything. That was the smart thing to do, the easy thing to do. But something in Stelle made him pause. He thought back to Lucien. He had lied about the backup dancer, and Stelle knew he had seen him looking at the cameras more than once. Stelle needed closure. He needed to know what was going on with Lucien. Then he would deal with William. So, Stelle made the trip to the parking garage, and he formulated a plan as he drove home. Lucien would be back in 2 days. Once he was back, Stelle would show him the evidence himself. He would make William confess, and he would be locked up, and Lucien and Stelle would both be free.